Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Saturday, June the 8th, 2024. So, taking a look at the latest detailed look at the GOES 16 True Color Visible Satellite Imagery provided by Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com. Link is in the description below this video leading to that website for the satellite images. And as we can see here, we are really going to have to watch the Gulf of Mexico and the northwestern Caribbean for this Central American gyre that is supposedly going to bring a lot of rainfall for a long period of time over portions of Cuba, portions of the deep south, such as Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and even portions of Texas. But not only that, we could see a potential for a tropical storm or a tropical depression to form out of this over the next 7 days potentially. Now, when looking at the rest of the Atlantic, otherwise looking pretty calm out there, nice good trade winds coming along across the main development region, keeping things in check. Stable Saharan layer, we're seeing a big outbreak of Saharan dust right now, getting ready to move off of Africa, and this is going to be a very significant Saharan dust. As you can see, all the brown on your screen, if the satellite is able to see this from a fairly far distance, this is very significant, and this is going to have a short-term impact on what comes off of Africa, because Saharan dust is dry, warm, stable air overlapping a moist, warm air mass, which otherwise is down here in the deep tropics. Now, when we take a look at the latest 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, as of Saturday, June the 8th, 2024, as of 1:32 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, there is no chances of any tropical cyclone formation in the next 7 days, which is good. So nothing to really talk about on this map. And also for the Eastern Pacific, looking pretty quiet for the time being. No tropical formation here that is expected during the next 7 days. Okay, so let's take a look at the latest global computer models. This is the GFS, the Global Forecasting System that NOAA renders 4 times a day. And I did a very good job at using annotations so you will all understand with what we're looking at on this map, so it's not very confusing and you don't lose me here in the video. So we're going to take out, we'll look at one thing at a time, and then we will look at our forecast. So first off, the low-level spin indicator is here. So the more deeper red colors you get, the stronger the low-level spin there is going to be. All right, so this is a look at 850 millibars above the surface. This is at 5,000 feet. So there's different layers of the atmosphere. 700 millibars is 10,000 feet. 500 millibars is 18,000 feet high above the surface. And then you get down to your surface, which is roughly about the 1,000 millibar layer. So looking at the low-level spin here, you can see there is a little bit of vorticity, and that's that angular momentum spin. And then when we take a look at our bottom right side of the screen, wind barbs, what does this represent? This is the wind direction at which way the wind is blowing from or to. So in this case, it's a easterly wind, okay? Winds blowing from the east to the west at 15 knots. And how do I know they're at 15 knots? Because when we take a look at our wind barb here, our flag, this is what we call a barb or a flag for short. All right, so the longer barb right here represents 10 knots, while the half barb, half as short as the other one, represents 5 knots. So when you put these two numbers together, you get 15 knots. So in this case, this is an easterly wind roughly at about 15 to 20 knots. Well, this is 20 knots here to be specific. It's hard to tell, but there's two long barbs. So this would be technically two 10-knot length barbs equaling to 20 knots. So hopefully that clears up a lot of the confusion. So now, let's take a look at what this means over here. So your height contours represent thicknesses in the atmosphere. Lower heights usually mean more unsettled weather. The air mass is more unstable. There's more lift in the atmosphere. And in this case, we look for areas of lower pressure or lower heights in the atmosphere. Just like surface air pressure, this is kind of the same thing, but only at 850 millibars. Kind of represents a similar thing. So here's what we're seeing. High contours on this map, vorticity and wind barbs. 3-in-1 plot system that Tropical Tidbits puts together. So we're going to go through this fairly quickly because there are some things that we look for in terms of where and when tropical formation gets going. So at least over the next 3 days, there's nothing unusual going on other than we do have a little bit of vorticity on the map. But look what happens here. We start seeing the northern end of this monsoon gyre or Central American gyre really shaping up. And you can see the trough here. Taking note, lower thicknesses, the lowest thicknesses would be within that trough axis. And we get these winds that come in through the Caribbean, and then they kind of curve up to the north, and then they bend around here. So we have a trough wave axis here, literally oriented from about the Bay of Campeche, Playa del Carmen in Mexico, as well into, say, the western Florida Peninsula. So therefore, this is the wave axis, and this is going to have enhanced thunderstorms, heavy rainfall, and gusty winds. And if there's enough vorticity bundling up, if this becomes a closed surface low and the background state becomes favorable, we could get a tropical depression or a storm out of this. It really just all depends on how this all kind of congeals, how this all evolves, because models do not do a very good job when it comes to kind of elongated a lot of this energy. And this is very elongated, very tangled up, really not organized by any means. And this is why the wave envelope really does not contract inward and able to spin up something significant. But within this, we do get a little bit of this bundling of spin within the atmosphere in the low levels. When we look at our surface winds, you can see that there is going to be some strong winds, potentially tropical depression force. So you really don't need a tropical storm or a tropical depression to get big impacts. All you need is a lot of moisture, and there is plenty of it. We'll be looking at the moisture plot here in just a second, but we can see here eventually this could go on to developing into something. There's a couple of areas of spin, but of course this is very uncertain on how the GFS model really wants to indicate this. And then maybe this kind of backwards or kind of rotates or retrogrades back into Florida in the next 10 days. But again, a lot of uncertainty when you are talking about a very broad wave envelope that is not organized to begin with, and the background state is mediocre. It's not really favorable or it's highly hostile. It's kind of in the middle, and it is, again, going to be important to see on how this all evolves. Now, when we look at the moisture plot here, this is in the deep layers. Again, 700 millibars. That's 10,000 feet to 300 millibars, which is about 30,000 feet above the surface. So this is looking a look at the deep layer moisture plot, and we can see there is going to be a lot of weather, a lot of rain, gusty winds, you name it. There's going to be a lot of flood problems down here. And again, this is coming from a system that is technically could or may not be a tropical depression at all. And yet, you could see a lot of moisture coming off of that. And when we actually back that up, you can see a lot of these yellow and red colors indicating a lot of moisture. So right now at the moment, this does look like something that we will have to really watch for a possible tropical depression or storm to develop. But in the meantime, because of the uncertainty, we're probably not going to forecast that yet. And instead, significant rainfall and flooding is possible now for the Florida Peninsula. For the entire state of Florida could really be in trouble here if this actually develops as what the GFS indicates. We have not gotten the European model in, but all we have right now is last night's run of the 0Z run, and it does indicate something a little pretty similar, but only the moisture fetch is much further west than what the GFS indicates, versus the Canadian model 2 is kind of right with the GFS with enhancement of showers and thunderstorms by Thursday and Friday. So in the next 4 to 6 days, we'll be looking at a lot of rainfall and flood problems here in the state of Florida, including for potentially the deep south. So now another way we could visualize that there are chances of tropical formation is simply looking at the latest, and let's actually zoom this in so you all can see here. There is looking at the European ensemble forecast. This is all of the members put together into an ensemble. And right now, most of them, or a few of them, are projecting that there is at least a 10% chance of a tropical storm that could form in the Gulf of Mexico. This is a very low chance, but it is a non-zero chance, which means if it's a 1%, that is technically a chance of a storm that forms, versus a 10% is also the same thing. There is at least some sort of a chance now that the Gulf of Mexico will be bear watching of this monsoon gyre. And if that's not enough, looking at the tropical depression chance from the European model ensemble, we do have higher chances down here, anywhere between a 10 all the way up to as high as a 30% chance in the southern portion of the Gulf of Mexico near the Bay of Campeche. We're really going to have to watch this. All right, so right now, ground zero over the Gulf of Mexico is the area to watch. Now, regardless of tropical formation, very heavy rain, enough to cause significant flooding, along to go with strong winds, and maybe some landslides are certainly not out of the question, especially over the higher terrain here of the Yucatan, as well as the, say, the Bay of Campeche. Certainly bear watching. And just, again, make sure you stay up to date here on my YouTube channel as this all evolves. Again, you don't need a tropical storm or depression to cause such severe impacts. All you need is enough moisture and a source of lift to lift that moisture up into higher levels where it can condense to form clouds. So now, taking a look at our sea surface temperatures, these are your actual sea surface temperatures. These are not your anomalies. And wow, we are really, I'm being serious, folks. We are very far ahead of schedule as far as how warm these sea surface temperatures are. I mean, come on. This is June the 8th, and we have our 80 Fahrenheit isotherm that extends all the way up here. In fact, some of this portion of the Gulf Stream current, we're getting 80 Fahrenheit waters extending almost to 40 degrees north in latitude. That is highly unusual, with the 80 isotherm now getting closer and closer to the 30 north in latitude line. And it's only the 8th. So what my point here is being that these sea surface temperatures are already reflecting mid to late August standards. And this is very concerning. This is something that you do not want to see. Sea surface temperatures here in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean are in the mid 80s already. We even have some upper 80s down here in the southern Gulf of Mexico, northwestern Caribbean. Man, really warm. Bathtub warm, getting there at least in some sense. And even the shallower waters like the Bay of Youth already reporting sea surface temperatures closing in on 90 degrees. 90. That's 10 degrees needed for a hurricane to develop. 80 degrees is optimal for hurricanes. 90 degrees Fahrenheit is optimal for violent, ferocious, historic hurricanes, perhaps. And that's what we're seeing. Sea surface temperature anomalies are definitely concerning, especially in the subtropics of the Atlantic over here. We are running as much as 3.5 degrees Celsius above average. And while that doesn't seem like a whole lot, I mean, come on. Imagining if it was 3.5 degrees below average. You know, that really makes a difference. That's about 7 degrees difference between 3.5 below and 3.5 above. And my point here is that this Iberian Peninsula current, the warm horseshoe shape, yeah, very textbook and fits analogs for hyperactive seasons. And that is why a lot of the agencies, and as I mentioned in yesterday's video, are predicting hyperactive season ahead for the Atlantic. And just because it's quiet now does not mean it's going to stay that way, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. The Gulf of Mexico running about 2.5 degrees Celsius above normal. The Caribbean running about 2 degrees Celsius. And again, the main development region out here in the deep tropics of the Atlantic, in the main development region or in the central portion, about 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius above average. Now, what really helps out a lot is looking at the University of Miami, Florida. This is a very high resolution map looking at sea surface temperature anomalies in the Gulf of Mexico, the northwestern Caribbean, and portions of the western Bahamas Sea right here off the coast of Florida. And I'll tell you, shelf waters here in Florida are already running about 2.5 degrees Celsius above normal. And look at this. Off the coast of Louisiana, we're seeing some plots here up to 3.5 to even 4 degrees Celsius above normal. Yes, I am not joking when I say that. And this is from the University of Miami, a trusted source to look at sea surface temperatures. And wow, really, really far above average, near record breaking, in fact, and much of the Gulf of Mexico, again, running about 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. And when we look at the actual sea surface temperature here, again, shelf waters off Florida, 31 Celsius now, the Bay of Youth, perhaps 32 degrees Celsius. Are you kidding me? I mean, yeah, look at the map here. I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing things. That is 32 degrees Celsius right there in the Bay of Youth off the coast of Cuba there, and even for portions here of central southern Cuba off the coast there, really warm. And some of these shelf waters down here, 31 Celsius. Wow. And look at this, some of the shelf waters here. Now this is easy to cool off and very easy to warm up too. So again, it really doesn't take into perspective of upper ocean heat content, where that requires more deeper heat being stored in the ocean. But you can see some of those shelf waters, 32.5 degrees Celsius. Yikes. Very, very warm. And that is really concerning for the season ahead. As I stated, upper ocean heat content is extremely high. Nothing that we have ever seen before. And I'm not saying this to cause fear or hype or anything. Look at it yourself. There will be a link in the description leading to these maps that I have here on the screen, and see it to believe it. You can look back at this going back to 2000, the year 2000. So 24 years back, you can see this stuff. And I'll tell you, there is not one year out of those 24 years that is as high of upper ocean heat content as what you're seeing right now. This is truly alarming. This is something that we have not seen before at all this early in the season. Now, we've seen this before, like in September, and that's because, well, it's September. The oceans had that much time to warm up. My gosh, it's June the 8th, 2024, 8 days of an entire week into the Atlantic hurricane season, and we're already seeing upper ocean heat content greater than 155, 160 in the northwestern Caribbean and in that loop current of the Gulf of Mexico. I'm telling you, folks, it's not looking good. I know what I'm looking for. I've been doing this for at least 5 or 6 years, but I've been tracking this without YouTube since I was about 10 years old, and I know exactly what I'm looking for, and what I'm showing you all is pretty alarming. All right, upper ocean heat content anomalies are also off the charts, especially in the loop current of the Gulf, the northwestern Caribbean. We are way up here on the chart. We're historically above average for this time of the year with upper ocean heat content, only a little bit below average here south of Bermuda, where you see some of that green. But wow, way out here, serious, folks. Man, if you get a storm that comes off of Africa and then it kind of does this, it's going to be moving over this patch of very high upper ocean heat content, historically speaking, and that is really why a lot of agencies are also predicting a hyperactive season, because we have a weak to moderate La Nina coming on top of a very warm AMO that's developing in the Atlantic. Okay, I do want to take a look at some Twitter posts, because that relates to with what we were promising to talk about in this video too, is the season is quiet does not mean it's going to stay quiet, all right? This is climatology in our favor, all right? It's the longest wait, this guy states, all right? And there will be a link, because I want to give credit to this guy. It's the longest wait for the Atlantic A storm in 10 years, but that's not meaningful or predictive. We're only 1 week into the Atlantic hurricane season, all right? I actually need to make this bigger. Why did I not make it bigger for you all? All right, so we're only 1 week into the hurricane season, folks, with 99% of activity ahead. 99%, that's pretty much the entire season ahead of us. If an MLB, Major League Baseball player team is a World Series contender but starts the first week slow, you don't write them off. So in other words, let's put this into perspective. Let's just use Michael Phelps did not get any gold medal for the first 10 days of him doing swimming in the Summer Olympics. Would you write them off? You would still give them a chance, right? That's what we're seeing here with the Atlantic. Let's not write this off. Let's not say, oh, this is a bust, whatever. This is not going to be a very busy season. We could fit a lot of named storms in the month of August, September, and October. All right, I just want to be clear with that. We are here. That's the arrow pointing to that. You can see right down there, there is hurricanes and tropical storms. I mean, come on. The season really doesn't kick off until mid-August. We have until mid-August, folks, for some deadness in the Atlantic. It is highly unusual to get a lot of activity, like, say, 5 or 6 named storms in June, right? Then that could be a very big concern of what the season lies ahead. But what my point here is being, we have a long way to go, 99% left of the Atlantic hurricane season, and we are for sure going to have a lot of named storms. I promise you guys. The analogs, the data back it all up. So the current season to date in climatology is this. I mean, look at where we're at. June the 7th, this is as of yesterday, and look at where we have to go. All right, so look at that closely and be like, oh, okay, I understand why it's quiet now, because climatology, the wind shear is still going strong in the Atlantic. Some Saharan dust, dry air, subsidence, the MJO, convective Kelvin waves are not working in our favor yet, but they will by late June. I promise you guys, I see something coming, and it's only June the 8th, first full week. It's not like we have to expect, oh, we got to get our first named storm on June 1st, then our third named storm or second one on June the 8th, or whatever, right? Don't expect it to be hyperactive until at least August. All right, so this is from Ben Knoll. I'm going to give him credit as well. Link in the description below this video. Really awesome climatologist that puts a lot of work into coding these maps. And I wanted to show you all this. All right, the ECMWF rainfall anomaly. This is 4 years ago in the main development region. All right, and this guy saves these images. We all remember that gave us 30 named storms. Remember that season? That was a hyperactive season, right? And look at the precipitation anomaly in July through September. It was all below, and we thought, oh, this is going to be a dead season, whatever. Let's sign off on it, right? Well, look at this year. Look at, and by the way, these are precipitation anomalies. The browns are below average rainfall and tropical moisture, and the green areas are well above average rainfall and tropical wave activity. Look at this year versus 2020, July through September 2020, July through September 2024. Wow, what a big difference these two maps make. Again, that to that. This is where we're headed, folks. That black square, I mean, 98% of that is covered and bathed in the darkest blue and teal colors you can think of. And that means record historic rainfall and tropical wave activity. Again, this is July. We're not worried about June right now. July is when things could kick off really quickly in the Atlantic. All right. Thank you, Ben Knoll, for showing that. And you could read his whole post here. Actually, pause the video if you want, and you can kind of read it here, or you can visit his Twitter page, which I highly recommend doing. One more thing. Michael Ferrandgomo, can't even say his last name, but I'll just say Michael. So, major hurricane strikes per U.S., and again, link in the description because I want to give credit to these people because they put a lot of work into this. Major hurricane strikes per coastal U.S. state since 1851. This data contains the most recent May 2024 hurricane data revisions, including the addition of the 2023 hurricane season. Pretty interesting how New York shares the same number of major strikes as Georgia. once again, no surprise that Florida has over 2 times as many major hurricane strikes as any other state. And when we look at that, 40 hurricanes since 1851 have major hurricane landfalls have hit Florida. 18 have hit Texas, 18 have hit Louisiana, and you can see here, and the least amounts are in 0. Not to say maybe that we could make up those numbers. Maybe Virginia could get a major hurricane strike this year. We never know, right? But Florida especially, you need to be prepared if you're in Florida, if you're in Louisiana, and especially in Texas. Boy, these Gulf states really need to be watching this season very closely because, of course, if we get 39 named storms like what Penn State is predicting, then the chances of a landfall could be much higher than if we had 15 named storms, if that makes sense. All right, not that we will see a lot of landfalls, but you just cannot write off a season until it's over. And I mean, let's recircle on this in late September if the season is absolutely dead. Then we can kind of write it off and say maybe it's a bust if we get into October and there's still no activity, right? But it's only June, folks. Put that into your brain right now. June, and it's not September or October yet. We have all of summer. It's not even summer yet until the 20th of June of this year. So put that into perspective. Okay, boy, oh boy, did I cover a lot in today's discussion. I'm sorry if these videos end up being really long, but there's some important information that we really have to look at and deal with. Oops, I'm sorry if I hit the mic there. Because again, a lot of people, I'm seeing it on social media saying this season is a bust. It's not going to be hyperactive at all like what people are saying. That's a really wrong way to go. There are analogs and there's data that we have in our hands that do suggest that we will have a hyperactive season. All right, this is the time. You better get prepared because if it's too late, it's going to be too late. Nature is probably giving us an extra month to get prepared for the season because once we get into July, I'm afraid we're going to have a lot of activity in July, August this year, and especially in September, October, and even into November. And why not? We might even see this go into early or mid-December of this season because of how active it's going to be. Starts late and it could also end late. Think about that. But anyways, I sure hope you did enjoy today's tropical weather outlook and discussion for Saturday, June the 8th, 2024. If you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and sharing this video, and also leaving a comment in the section below this video. But please check out the links below this video leading to today's post, because those are important. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with you on Monday with another tropical weather outlook and discussion.